Where's it at?
I don't make reviews on this channel, at least not in the traditional sense. I never aim for my videos to on why you should or should not check out a certain piece of media. They're still critiques, but I write with the assumption that you're already familiar with the topic of discussion and not just looking for a cosign. Over the years, YouTubers have largely moved away from day one reviews and recommendations to longer form analysis content. Major news outlets have remained mostly unchanged, and of course some YouTubers are serving up their videos the old-fashioned way. But there's been a general shift in the type of content that creators want to make and that viewers want to watch, and it's easy to see why. The more freeform approach of analysis allows for more nuanced discussion than a simple should you watch or should you play. I'm not saying that everything has to be a 5-part, 10-hour video essay, and we do see a lot more variety in media critique on the platform than in the early 2010s. But even in the big 2025, there's still an aspect of those classic reviews that remains a staple of popular media discussion, something far older than any online platform that'll stick around till the heat death of the universe, a universal descriptor that experts and Philistines alike can use to communicate the quality of a work and have everyone understand. Because men lie, women lie, but numbers don't.
Yo.
God, I just keep hearing the fucking numbers.
We want the numbers, Nathan. That's all we've
The numbers.
The numbers, Nathan. The numbers, Nathan.
Review scores have become something of a language of their own. Their grades are often considered separately from their respective reviews or simply presented in isolation and expected to impart at least some level of knowledge on how the author feels towards a particular work. Hey, I know this game. Man, I don't speak this language, but I speak this one. It's more than just a tool used by critics and consistently comes up in casual discussion. Social cataloging sites like Letterboxd, Backlogged, IMDb, and MyAnimeList all let users assign number ratings, because these days, everyone is a critic. So of course, it stands to reason that we should have some shared system that everyone's familiar with. If you give a movie a 10 out of 10, we can safely assume that you think it's a damn good movie. Naturally, the opposite can be assumed for a 0 out of 10. So if you give something a 7 actually, let's put that one on hold. The 0 to 10 scale isn't the only one, but it's by far the most common. Some use a 0 to 5 or 0 to 100. Others favor a binary thumbs up or thumbs down. Music critic Anthony Fantano uses a 0 to 10 scale with the additional descriptors light, decent, and strong, while also placing records in between, effectively making it a 65-point system. If you scroll YouTube Shorts or TikTok, you might have even seen a scale that goes from
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
to
That's why he's the goat. The goat.
or who's to say that
That's why he's the GOAT.
isn't better than a
It was perfect. Perfect.
aggregation website Metacritic takes all of these reviews using different scales and converts them to their own percentage system, which are then averaged to achieve a single 0 to 10 metascore. Not all critics' reviews are weighed equally, and the website is pretty tight-lipped about the exact formula used to calculate that illustrious metascore. Nevertheless, Metacritic's ratings are treated with a certain level of prestige, far more than many of the news outlets that they aggregate. The website is seen by many as an impartial third party that simply gathers information and concisely delivers an unbiased measure of quality. But I'd argue that the metascore is less useful than any singular review, and sure as hell isn't unbiased. The decision to convert everything into a 100-point scale may seem inconsequential, but has negative implications for that final score. A publication using a 5-star system automatically has more pull than one who shares a scale with Metacritic. When converted, each star becomes 20 whole points to the metascore, making systems with fewer increments disproportionately influential. Additionally, as mentioned before, the aggregator has final say over how each critic score is weighed when averaging, so Metacritic isn't exactly the neutral party they present themselves as. Even if we agreed on a unified system, different numbers mean different things to different people, and the problem comes from trying to take something as opinionated and irrational as art critique and turn it into a science. Truth is, most people just assign scores based on vibes.
Even though they don't really discuss it at great length either, is just a reflection of my personal opinion or preference. There isn't some kind of magical criteria checklist that I'm sort of, oh, this is worth this many points and this is worth that many points.
Gun to your head, tell me the qualitative difference between an 8.4 and an 8.5.
I don't
Turns
know.
out, MyAnimeList allows users to rank anime they've seen out of 10. When writing a review, you label it as either recommended, not recommended, or mixed feelings, but the site still tells you what score that reviewer gave the show. Here's a 7 out of 10 review that recommends this anime. Here's a 7 that thinks you shouldn't watch it. And here's a 7 that feels mixed. Review scores only have meaning within the context of their reviewer and how that specific reviewer scores other media, but they're rarely ever engaged within that fashion. If my homie busts through the door and tells me, bro, you're not gonna believe this, Skibby Reviews gave your favorite game a 5 out of 10, my reaction's not gonna be, oh, we gotta kill him, we gotta beat him to death with hammers. I'm thinking, who the fuck is Skibbity Reviews? If you have no frame of reference for how somebody tends to assign scores and what they value in a work, that number is completely meaningless. You can know that they gave something a 5 out of 10, but you have no idea what that 5 means without them explicitly telling you. Scores are meant to summarize the contents of one's personal review, so the more of their reviews you've consumed, the better idea you have of what each number means. But counterintuitively, the more familiar you are with their writing and personal tastes, the less use you have for a numerical representation of their feelings. It's always funny when people get upset about a review score from a website they don't read, from a writer they don't know. How did IGN give these two games the same rating? Well, that's an easy one. IGN didn't do shit. There is no John IGN handing out reviews to every single game. I mean, looking at your own thumbnail, you can see that this game was reviewed by one Jarrett Green, and the other one was done by Rachel Weber. This is in fact not the same nigga, and working for the same company doesn't connect them to some game journalist hive mind. Now look, I get the gaming community's general distaste for game publications and love for dunking on their riveting journalism. I can't lie, I've dabbled in such tomfoolery myself, but somewhere along the way, gamers lost the plot and would rather fixate on these arbitrary numbers than make any substantive criticism. Every review, ranking your tier list video, without fail, will have a massive spike in traffic at the very end, from people skipping the content of the video to see that all-important score. Complaints obsess over the number assigned to the game and how it compares to other games' numbers. This guy's not pissed at anything said in the video, but because a different review of a different game by a different person got a higher score. Comments like these are so plentiful, you could make a whole compilation video. Shit, somebody already did. No one cares to engage with the arguments being made. If they're not obsessing over scores, then it's an isolated quote that tells you nothing about the review. It has a little something something for everyone. The game really makes you feel like Batman, the exaggerated swagger of a black team, too much water. You know, the author behind that last one actually gave the game a 7.8 out of 10, and their argument was that the prevalence of water-type Pokemon trivialized team building, not just that the map had too much water.
It's not a new complaint, but the Hoenn region is still imbalanced type-wise, heavily favoring water Pokemon. It's especially noticeable in Alpha Sapphire since the villainous Team Aqua uses a lot of water types. It just feels like there are water Pokemon in nearly every battle, and I have an overleveled Pikachu to show for it.
Of course not. Nobody actually reads the reviews, and why should we? Everyone knows that game journalists are in the pockets of publishers, making them morally compromised and biased, and that's why I get my opinions from YouTubers.
I'm gonna plug It Takes Two into the voice meter now. I'm giving it a 95%. I don't have any complaints at all, literally not even the slightest nitpick that I could find with this game. This game is absolutely
So why not a perfect score?
Now I know you're wondering, well then why didn't I give it 100%?
Yeah, actually, I am wondering that.
I reserve 100% for games that I feel anyone of any taste can pick up and fucking fall in love with and, you know, go wild about. And the only game I would ever consider giving 100% to is Minecraft. I'm personally not a huge Minecraft fan, but I actually think it's probably the perfect video game.
Well, that's kind of fucking stupid. The method some reviewers use to avoid seeming biased is to approach a game from the perspective of a hypothetical everyman, John Gamer, if you will. They're more concerned with analyzing what they think most people want to see, because focusing on their own personal experience would be biased, and that's not useful to anybody. Reviews have to be unbiased and objective. I think this approach fails on several fronts. To be truly objective, your comments need to be based in facts, limiting your review to just verifiable observations. For instance, the game has a silent protagonist, and the story is divided into 6 chapters. The moment you draw any conclusion regarding the game's quality based on those observations, it becomes subjective. The silent protagonist makes it difficult to get invested, or the 6th chapter isn't as fleshed out as the prior ones. It goes against the way in which we consume quite literally everything. When you're eating a good-ass burger, do you ask yourself, I wonder what the average person appreciates in a burger? Or are you enjoying the flavors that are currently busting on your taste buds? Personal enjoyment precedes any
You're
analytical
enjoying
lens
the
you choose to view
flavors
something
busting
through.
on
It's
your
the most
taste
primal
buds.
reaction we have when engaging with anything, and influences any remark that follows. No matter how hard you try, you can never remove yourself from your own critique. To some extent, your personality and preferences will always bleed through. In 2012, the late film critic Roger Ebert wrote an article addressing criticism saying that he gives out positive scores too easily. His Metacritic seems to also support this claim, indicating that on average he grades 8.9% higher than other critics. He first attributes this disparity to his 4-star rating system, on which he considers 2.5 stars to still be a thumbs up, skewing his numbers higher. But even when accounting for this difference, his scores still tend to be more favorable, and he presents several possibilities as to why. 1, he just loves cinema too much. He approaches every film not with an analytical lens, but with hope and optimism, because he knows how challenging it is to get something from the page to the big screen. With all the moving parts, getting a film made is a small miracle, and Ebert believes that's worth celebrating. Like any cinephile, he also feels strongly about certain actors and has difficulty not admiring the work from his favorite directors, like Scorsese, Hitchcock, and Kurosawa. A film being in a particular genre alone will make him more likely to score it higher. Ebert concludes by expressing his distaste for people who fixate on his review scores. They ask him, how could you give that movie that many stars? But when he responds asking what exactly about the review they disagree with, it's crickets. His reviews can only speak to what he sees on the screen and how he feels about it. If you see the same thing and feel differently, that's fine and should be expected. But if your beef is with some made-up number, then you can go fuck yourself. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. In short, he tends to rate films higher because of his own personal biases that he openly states and expects people to be aware of when engaging with his critique. I don't think of subjectivity as something that hurts reviews, but rather enhances them, by allowing readers to better see where the author is coming from and know if they share the same perspective. Not every critic is for every reader. I'm not a fan of horror movies, so I'm not going to lose my shit when Horror Fan 666 gives the new slasher film a 10 out of 10. That number means nothing to me or people like me. I'm not the target demographic. I play a lot of fighting games. A review from somebody new to the genre isn't something I'd watch, but if you're also new, that might be exactly what you're looking for. Despite not using scores, I've never left a Yahtzee video not knowing how he feels about a particular game. His fondness for a title is inversely proportional to the amount of snark he uses when talking about it. I like some of Donkey's videos, but I don't care to listen to him talk about any JRPG. I've seen enough from him to know that we value very different things when it comes to the genre. I get where he's coming from. I'm just not coming from that same place, and that's fine. I won't waste my energy getting upset over reviews that I never expected to agree with in the first place. I don't care what IGN, Kotaku, Game Rant, or any major news site has to say about anything. Those aren't people. They're companies that employ dozens of writers, each with their own personal tastes, beliefs, and values, all of which bias their reviews. I'll never familiarize myself with all of these writers, nor do I imagine that most people will. So I find it strange that anyone gives two shits when X publication gives arbitrary number to a certain piece of media. Following every major release, there seems to always be outrage when even a single...
Me, though, if I'm gonna spit facts, the only reason why I heavily do look at reviews is because I could either save my money or blow $70. That's why a lot of the time, I remember I told you guys that story where when I was young, I used to buy games off the box art. And then when I played the game itself, they were something completely different than what I thought it was. You know what I'm saying? If you go just off the box art, you could think it's a completely certain type of game, and then when you open it up, it's something different. So I go to reviewers because I'm like, all right, I want to know if other people think the game is good, because I don't want to end up spending $70 and the game is ass. You said boo-hoo. Hey, bro, I'm still $70 up. That's all that matters, bro. That shit's bread. Because if games was like $30, $40 maximum, you know what I'm saying? it won't hurt your wallet as much. But $70 and then the game sucks. Oh, that feels terrible.
Journalist goes against the grain.
That feels
Paradoxically, it's the
terrible.
people who claim that they hate game journalists the most that most consistently engage with their content, keeping their finger on the pulse of every article, every review, every blog post, so they can be first on the scene and farm that sweet Twitter ad revenue. Late last year, a review from Screen Rant of Black Myth Wukong came under fire for giving the game a 3 out of 5 for, quote, a lack of inclusivity and diversity. Of course, upon hearing those two words, the worst people you know assumed that the reviewer meant black people. But upon personal inspection, I can confirm that none of us were found at the scene of the crime. The author was actually referring to a lack of female characters in the game, and despite what the popular narrative might lead you to believe, this section was only some 200 words in a 2,600-word essay. Although I don't agree with the review, I found it to be incredibly inoffensive. She points out that in the 2 chapters he played for the review, the game doesn't feature any female characters. Multiple are featured prominently in the following chapters, and she should have reserved her judgment until then. But even if they weren't, a lack of diversity in my Chinese monkey game isn't something that would make me reconsider my purchase, and I think I can assume the same for the people who complain about the review. But someone out there might. That's the audience she's writing for. And if it wasn't obvious, her bio plainly states those biases. Shit, I can't believe it. The writer who claims to value diversity and inclusion writes about diversity and inclusion. This is like complaining about Nazi propaganda. Meanwhile, this is who you keep in your company.
I said there's a lot of things that I love about Hitler.
Bro, I think the writing was on the wall. The simple fact is that these are not Screen Rant regulars stumbling across this review and getting upset. They're people who already have something that they want you to believe and actively search for stories to support what they're trying to sell. Review scores might not be great at communicating opinions, but they're exceptionally good at pushing a narrative. With their context removed, reality can be whatever you want it to be. Isolate the quotes that support you, ignore the ones that don't, and create your own desired intent. You don't need to engage with the original author. Everyone has preconceived notions of what these numbers mean, and you can rely on those visceral reactions to sell your story. No one is a blank canvas, and if you tell them what they want to hear, it's unlikely they'll dig any deeper. Viewers approach reviews with defined beliefs and decide what each score means based on those beliefs. 8 out of 10 is commonly accepted to be a fairly positive score, unless if they're talking about something that you like. Then, that's a disrespectful score. And if it's something you don't like, that might as well be a perfect 10. IGN dropped a review you disagree with? Classic IGN. Too brain dead to know what a good game looks like. Game journalists suck. IGN dropped a review you agree with? Damn, this game is so good that even the
Yes. He talking that shit. This is what a lot of people do, and I pointed that shit out to a mother. Yo, I pointed that shit out one time to some motherfuckers in chat, where if IGN does a good review on a game that you enjoy, you fuck with IGN. If IGN gives a bad review on a game that you enjoy, you completely be like, yo, you still listen to IGN? Fuck these motherfuckers. Bro, nah, he's spitting facts in this part, bro.
The dumbasses at IGN can't deny it. Game journalists suck. The existing narrative informs the approach, and the goalposts will be shifted as necessary.
Me?
Anything to stay pissed off and further spread outrage. Outrage over media has become something of a currency in and of itself, and review scores are proven to be useful for farming that currency. Some YouTubers will outright make up fake scores from major publications to put in their thumbnails. Who cares if the information is readily available? The intended audience won't care to look it up because they're looking to have their beliefs reinforced, not challenged. Outrage merchants simply supply that demand. But it's not
So
just
we don't listen to IGN, that's me?
Large gaming news sites are frequently accused of being nothing more than mouthpieces for major publishers, providing favorable coverage to their titles and lambasting those that they have no personal ties to. While grossly oversimplified, there are several explicit and implicit factors that harm the legitimacy of game journalism. In a 2015 article, Jason Schreier details the relationship between video game review scores and the developers behind those games. It's become something of an open secret that publishers offer bonuses to developers tied to Metacritic scores. Often when negotiating the initial terms of their contract, publishers will lock a portion of the amount the devs are asking for behind these conditional bonuses or royalties. In late 2010, Obsidian Entertainment were looking forward to a hefty bonus from Bethesda, following the release of Fallout New Vegas, so long as the game earned a Metascore of 85 or higher. Fast forward a few weeks and damn. Speaking with someone close to the situation, Schreier found this bonus to be worth $1 million, just over $14K that would have gone into the pockets of every Obsidian employee. When there's such a clear monetary incentive to higher Metascores, companies are encouraged not to make quality games,
I
but to
would
make
gas
well-reviewed
up a
games. And to
game,
that end,
bro.
place pressure on critic sites.
They'd be like, yo, Retro, glaze this new game that's coming out, man. It's called Nino Kuni 2. I'd be like, amazing storytelling, beautiful colors, blue waters, an amazing RPG system with skill trees.
Yo Retro, what's good? I just got here. Don't let this video make you forget that Retro was right about how Nier was a mid-game and y'all are only interested at first because of 2B.
No! Nah, Taint, you don't want to start that. You don't want to start that. We don't gotta go there, cause nah, bro. Let's just continue the video.
Or cater their games to the ones reviewing. Some companies go as far as to hire consultants or critics to play early builds of their game and write mock reviews to predict how that game will be received and identify changes that may result in a higher score. Companies that make games and companies that review them have always had a you scratch my back, I scratch yours type relationship. Their dynamic is interdependent by its very nature. These publications,
yo, chat, I never played Fallout New Vegas.
Promote feature exclusive interviews and inside information, all of which bring more eyes to those properties. Developers and publishers provide them with the access.
Everybody said that's like the best fucking
news sites
game.
will want to maintain that access, and game companies will want favorable coverage. The nuances of how they score or their specific system doesn't matter, since all publishers look at is that final aggregate number. What constitutes a good score is explicitly said by the ones holding the money, and they're free to restrict access from anyone they think could keep them from hitting that goal. Take a look at this. This right here is the 7 out of 10, but I like to call it Schrodinger's review score. It exists in a superposition of both being approval and disapproval. It's high enough that it won't tank the aggregate score, but it's not high enough to seem like glowing praise. 7 is indifference. It's appeasement that seeks to be as inoffensive as possible. Despite being on the upper half of that scale, this is what the numbers come to represent for many people, with some theorizing that the abundance of 7s from outlets like IGN is evidence enough that reviewers are paid off by AAA publishers.
Rachel's
Throughout
favorite
2024,
is
IGN
that
gave
he
no
calls
games a 0,
mid.
a
7
1,
is
or a
the
2.
mid.
They gave 3 3s, 3 4s, and 17 5s. 25 titles received a 6, and 61 titles received a 7. There were 67 8s, 36 9s, and just 3 10 out of 10s. While it's undeniable that their reviews tend to lean towards the upper end of the
7
scale,
is mid.
the truth of the
No,
matter
Chad, don't
isn't quite as
start it.
flagrant.
Don't
IGN's
start
review
it.
of
Don't
last year's Star Wars
start
Squadrons
it.
in particular was heavily criticized for what many believe to be an undeserved 7 out of 10. And the criticisms only got worse after IGN released another article some months later, advertising a sale for the game, complete with an affiliate link. The article directly references that same review and calls the game one of their favorite at the sales event, indicating a clear conflict of interest. This conflict is something that's always existed in game journalism, and even in decades-old print publications, you can find 2-page spreads dedicated to advertising a certain game. Flip a few more pages and see a review for that same exact game. Just another product of how closely tied these two parts of the industry are. Former IGN writer Alana Pierce released a YouTube video discussing the backlash and offering an explanation for the prevalence of 7s. The video is not great, but it demonstrates how your perception of these numbers can be influenced by working in the industry. She says that the lower half of the scale is so rarely used because it's reserved for cheaply made indie games that barely function, and the complex systems and standard of quality set by AAA titles tend to put them on the upper end of the scale. That lower portion has to exist so that they can score everything from the latest Call of Duty to Little Timmy's first game in RPG Maker, even if the latter is unlikely to ever receive coverage.
Games that come out do not have even like an inch of the complexity or nuance that you are used to in AAA video games. Bad UI, unintuitive controls, just all of the things that net them somewhere between 1 to 5 on a game review scale. That means that they kind of need the space for the 5 to 10 for the other game.
The IGN website actually has a page explaining their scoring system and features a short description of each number along with some examples. It doesn't make much sense to calibrate the review scale around games that aren't featured on them, and IGN's own description doesn't seem to agree with this sentiment. But working for the company and seeing these high scores be the norm, it tracks that she'd rationalize this as the system working as intended. When publishers, game journalists, and the average consumer look at this review scale, each one sees something completely different. Alana concludes the video by saying,
If you just remember that it's just some fucking guy's opinion. I used to be that fucking guy. It's just some fucking guy has an opinion on something. That's all a game review is.
Which is true, I agree. Reviews are ultimately the opinion of an individual, and things will be a hell of a lot better if that's how they were treated. But as we've seen, that's not how people perceive them, nor is that how game companies want you to perceive them. A 10 is a 10. No matter who writes the review, that number is treated as a stamp of approval from that site, and publishers will make damn sure you know. We've all seen Game of the Year re-releases, with these PNGs with a game in the center surrounded by high scores and the websites they came from. This is the ultimate goal. Meaningless praise with no context or nuance to give the impression of universal acclaim. It's the entire rationale behind accolades trailers. Companies taking a victory lap and highlighting all the nice things critics said about their product. Hey, you might be on the fence about our game, but have you considered that GamePro.de said eine wunderbare Mischung aus allem, was wir an Zelda lieben? Come on, you gotta buy the game now. You just gotta. Lords of the Fallen is a fairly unremarkable Souls-like from 2023 that received mixed reviews. Meanwhile, its accolades trailer looks like this. This shit
This
is not
problem
representative of the
wouldn't
general
happen if
sentiment
we had
surrounding
a
this
common
game. Steam
review
reviews have been mixed for as
system.
long as I can remember.
That's why we should use a school letter system than an out of 10. It causes too many any confusions.
If we had a common review system, that's why we should use a school letter system. Like I give it an A, I give it a Z. Like that, I give it a Q. I'm bugging, bro. You got me fucked up, Nep. ZA.
Critic, it's sitting at a 75% Metascore and 6.7 user score, but there's nothing stopping them from just scraping the best reviews off the top to make it seem like the game was received better than it actually was. If IGN don't got me, IGN France got me. Making a good game that's released to critical acclaim isn't the priority. All that matters is having the perception of one, because just like with those YouTubers selling outrage, maintaining the agenda is their top priority. People like to pretend that these media outlets are obsolete and no longer read by anybody, but the truth is that they still have an influence over the public's purchasing decisions. Publishers wouldn't value their coverage so greatly if they didn't, or more specifically, the numbers attached to that coverage. Square Enix has directly cited Metascores as a key factor used to predict sales. Retailers ask publishers for Metascore predictions to decide which games they want to stock their shelves with. Anything they can do to optimize that score, they will. Of course, the problem's not so egregious that companies will directly demand a particular score. They can't openly coerce review sites with threats or financial opportunities. Well, except for that one time where they did just that. Back in November of 2007, editorial director at GameSpot, Jeff Gerstmann, was fired for giving a 6 out of 10 to the game Kane and Lynch: Dead Men. The decision to terminate him was reached after the game's publisher, Eidos Interactive, threatened to pull advertising from their site. When recounting the events 5 years later, Jeff mentions that although it rarely ends in termination, this kind of pressure from publishers is far from an isolated incident.
I guess what had happened was that the publisher of the game had threatened to pull advertising money. It's probably key to note that that's actually not, that happens a fair amount in this line of work.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all the
Typically, companies try to game the system through far more tacit means. They'll offer preferential treatment to certain news outlets, early access coverage, exclusive preview events, paid flights, and hotels. None of these perks are provided with an established agreement that they'll receive anything in return. Certainly not positive review scores, but of course, they won't want to give a bad review
Wow,
score
Luigi in a
because of the implication.
sombrero.
You think you're getting flown out, wined, and dined for a 5 out of 10?
I'm leaving it with something.
You know what I mean? I'm from around the way. I'm leaving with something.
If a publisher suspects that a certain critic might give a less than stellar review, then they can simply not give them access. They can't stop them from buying a copy, but they won't have access to an early review code. And in this industry, access is everything. Fans are chomping at the bit for any content on their most anticipated games. I've seen what a lack of content does to a fandom. The hype train has no brakes. These days, people pay a premium to play games 3 days early, and the reviews have to be out well before the games. If you want to remain competitive, your review has to be among those first out the gate. But if you want a code, you'll have to play nice. AAA games sell the most in the weeks immediately following their launch, so that initial impression is what publishers most carefully construct. CD Projekt Red notoriously prohibited reviewers from showcasing their own gameplay of Cyberpunk on launch, figuring that the performance issues wouldn't be a problem, so long as they quickly got copies into the hands of ignorant fans. In October of last year, Fextra Life put out a video on Dragon Age the Veilguard that I can only describe as self-aware, yet painfully oblivious. The video goes over their interactions with the game's publisher EA leading up to its launch. They describe how they've been in constant communication with EA regarding the title and assured that they'd be receiving a review code. Come September, Fextra Life, along with several other journalists and content creators, were invited to an exclusive preview event and made videos about their hands-on experience with the game. Fextra Life praised the game, but also gave a fair bit of criticism. Following this video, they'd be ghosted by their contacts at both EA and BioWare, and that review code started seeming a little bit less certain. Of course, they were never worried that they'd be denied a code, and they were sure to let you know.
Asked me why my criticisms were worded more cautiously, and asked me if I was concerned when I made my video that I'd be denied access to a review code. To which, of course, I replied, no, I'm not worried about getting denied access to a review code. That simply doesn't happen in the gaming industry. But I was not concerned about this at all. I reassured him that he shouldn't be concerned about this, because it's just not really a thing in the gaming industry. It's so rare that it shouldn't scare someone into not saying what they think about a game.
Only to then say,
as a result, we discovered that we were essentially getting fake reassurances that we were getting a code to keep us happy while denying us access to the Veilguard.
Once EA started sending out codes and they weren't among the recipients, it became clear that they were being blackballed, and that didn't sit too well with them.
It is feeling like EA is deliberately trying to prevent us from telling you what we think about the game, and they want you to hear it from someone else. So you then have to ask yourself, why would EA do this? What is their angle? What are they trying to accomplish by doing this? Just think about this for a second. If you're on the EA end and you're trying to manipulate review scores because you want high review scores, what are you going to do? You're going to research press and content creators and what they usually give to games score-wise to give you a general idea of how they're going to review your game.
What's most strange to me about this video is that it's trying to come to you from this angle of a noble whistleblower, sticking it to the man, and exposing the truth about Dragon Age Veilguard reviews. They say things like,
but what I want to talk about today is going to impact the way that you watch reviews today, the ones that are coming out today. And this information should not be kept from you.
As if this practice is something that they just became privy to. There's no way in hell you've been in the industry for this long and are just now finding out how publishers game the system. Fextra Life points to other channels to let you know that they're not the only ones getting shafted, yet they still tell their audience that they were never worried about being denied a code, because that's just not a thing that happens. It's not that it doesn't happen, it just doesn't happen to them, and now that it has, it's a problem. The question I found myself asking is, would this video exist if they had gotten a code? And honestly, I don't believe that it would. Fextra Life is far more concerned with emphasizing how mild their criticisms were, rather than how slimy restricting access due to good faith criticism is to begin with.
And just to illustrate how mild that our criticisms were of the Veilguard, after publishing our impressions video, we got called shills. Some people accused us of being paid by BioWare and EA to promote the game, which of course we're obviously not.
They were perfectly fine with the arrangement when it was mutually beneficial. From their perspective, games companies reach out with opportunities, they turn that into content, and that's just the way things are. This was just a gentle reminder that that relationship is conditional. Whether it's billion-dollar corporations trying to increase profits by any means, or misinformation merchants peddling perpetual outrage and driving discourse, nobody's actually trying to incite any meaningful discussion by throwing around these numbers. If they are, they probably said a lot more than just that, and that's far more worth engaging with than some silly digits. The title of this video isn't exactly true. They do serve a purpose, just not one that serves you. The way that scores are currently used, everyone stands to benefit except for the average consumer, who supposedly they exist to inform. In practice, they're nothing more than conduits for petty arguments and disinformation. It's a bit ironic that YouTube is now in an age of 5-hour retrospectives and video essays, but it seems like media discourse has never been worse. Everything is either ass or it's gas. It's peak or it's bleak. And don't ever disagree with somebody or they'll hit you with that media literacy diff. There is thoughtful discussion to be had. It's just buried under piles of discourse with a capital D, most of which simply isn't worth your time. Learn to sit back and observe. Not everything needs a reaction. Stick to just a couple of voices whose opinions you respect and perspectives you understand. People you don't need to hear a score from, and when opinions differ, you can chop it up or just agree to disagree. The folks around you will always be better than some journalist or YouTuber. The next time the homie checks out that thing you recommended, instead of asking what they rated out of 10, just ask what they liked about it. I guarantee that you'll both have so much more to say. Unless it's The Lord of the Rings, those movies are ass. 2.561 out of 10. It's the biggest piece of
That's what I'm gonna start asking people. True. No.
Long-time viewers of this channel.
Man, fuck Naruto, bro.
On why you should or should not check out a certain piece of media.
Dude. Nah, bro. Nah, but I forgot what I was gonna say, bro. Never mind, chat. Never mind. I forgot what the fuck I was gonna say. Yeah, got me fucked up. What the hell is this?